Hey guys, welcome to Reddit Brew. We're back at it again with the JUSTNOMIL cruise control saga. So if you missed the other parts to this saga, I will link them in the pinned comment below. Before we end this saga off in the next video with the grand finale, I wanted to read 2 stories about cruise control that took place in the past to help better paint the picture of her craziness. I mean, the picture of cruise control has been painted. Picasso. But these stories were too cringe not to share. Oldie but a goodie. Cruise control attempts to share custody of my husband's graduation. I've mentioned a lot that cruise control refuses to see her ex-husband, my husband's dad. If their divorce was a child, it would be enrolled in college by now. She can't seem to get over it. Speaking of college, my husband's graduation from his undergrad was a mess. Cruise control wanted to go, but she didn't want Phil and his wife to be there. A big snag in this demand of hers, one of my husband's stepsister was also graduating that day from the same university. They were not going to miss seeing 2 of their kids graduate. I was also graduating, but this was early in our relationship, so I wasn't part of the family yet. There's a large graduation ceremony, everyone in the famous football field, someone slightly well known as the commencement speaker, and thousands of family members sweating their balls off. There's also a smaller ceremonies for different colleges. The College of Education will have their own ceremony with the grads that are graduating with a degree in education, for example. My husband suggested that if cruise control didn't want to see Phil and Smil, she could attend the smaller one. Cruise control was upset that she wouldn't get to see the big graduation, and she threw a fit. She wanted the whole shebang. Small ceremony, big ceremony, and lunch and pictures afterwards. Despite this tantrum, she skipped the small ceremony, which is fine, because they're not really for family anyway. Cruise control finally compromised that she would get a seat far away from Phil and Smil. She would take one half of the stadium and they could sit anywhere else. Cruise control showed up late and got a horrible seat high up in the bleachers. She also dropped her phone and it somehow got lost forever. I don't know how, because it's not like these are high school bleachers. They're pretty solid. She swore that it fell from great heights and she heard it smashed to pieces, but never found it. The plan to make sure everyone avoided each other was that Phil and Smil would stay in their seats for 30 minutes to let cruise control have time to leave after the ceremony. I still can't believe how selfish this request was. Phil and Smil rolled their eyes and did exactly what they wanted to do. They'd let cruise control take her damn pictures, take my husband to lunch, and then my husband would pick me up from my lunch with my parents, and we would go to Phil and Smil's house about an hour away to celebrate with dinner. My husband was disappointed because he wanted pictures right after the ceremony with his stepsister, but he gave in. Cruise control had waved me off when I suggested she pick a landmark to meet by. Oh, I'll just call you. So she didn't call. She didn't respond to calls, didn't text. I was meeting my parents and we ran into my husband's stepsister and were taking pictures. My husband texted me, "Have you seen my mom? I can't find her and she's not responding to me." I told him he could come and take pictures with his sis because we weren't far away. He came and got some nice pictures of the 2 of them, like he wanted. He kept looking around for cruise control for about 45 minutes and then he finally gave up. My mom told him that he could come to lunch with us. For all we knew, cruise control had never shown up to graduation at all, and she was totally flaking out. He seemed a little sad, but he perked up once we gave him some food. Cruise control finally fought her way through graduation traffic and got to her hotel. She rented a hotel when she only lives an hour away and was still late, where she opened her laptop and started spamming my husband on Facebook Messenger. By this time, my husband and I were done with lunch with my lovely parents and brothers, and we were at Phil and Smil's house, taking an afternoon nap because we'd been in the hot sun all morning. He woke up to all of her messages, and it was literally so many messages that he couldn't possibly have read them all. She wrote a novel. He was still under the impression that she had skipped his graduation, so he said, "This can wait." and just got ready for dinner. Dinner was a fun backyard barbecue with enough margaritas to drown a horse. Phil had prepared so much food, and everyone needed to be rolled home when it was over. We had a great time. Cruise Control would never dare to show up at their house, so we had a peaceful night. She made the next week hell by alternating between yelling at my husband for abandoning her and crying that she was a terrible mother and she felt so bad. He ignored her for once because he was legitimately angry. She'd made up all of these demands, and then she hadn't even held up her end of the bargain. She finally stopped her crying, and now she doesn't mention graduation at all. She was not invited when he graduated with his master's. Cruise Control wanted my husband to change his last name. Quick background. My husband's parents divorced when he was a toddler. He was raised 50-50 by both of his parents. This didn't stop Cruise Control from lamenting about how hard it is to be a single mother to a child with a deadbeat dad. Cruise Control spent a lot of my husband's childhood trying to demonize his father. It didn't work. If anything, him and his dad are practically best friends. They're two peas in a pod. She was threatened by this and would cry, wail, and whimper until my husband awkwardly told her what she wanted to hear so that she would leave him alone. She asked him to do and say things that were totally unfair. Asked him to say he loved her more than he loved his dad, etc. The last name change was the one thing my husband wouldn't let her have. When my husband was in middle school, it suddenly started to bother Cruise Control that she still had her ex-husband's last name. She decided to change it, but only if my husband changed his too. There was some kind of odd logic that he would belong more to whichever parent had the same last name. My husband didn't want to change his last name. It had been his name his whole life, and his dad was still very present and devoted to him. So why erase that link to him when he was forced to favor his mother in almost everything else? Cruise Control continued to badger him about it for the next few years. She tried to compromise by saying that the two of them could come up with a brand new last name instead of using her old maiden name. She used to make handwritten lists of last names and give them to him to ponder. Apparently she dropped it for a few years, but she started right back up when she realized we were getting married. She started in on the "which last name will you take?" stuff very quickly. She was practically foaming at the mouth. She was so excited. She wrote one of those god-awful emails that was like 60 pages long about last names and how people are making their own traditions now. How fun, right? You guys should pick a new name that has meaning to you. She started making handwritten lists again. A lot of her suggestions sounded like a nom de plume one might choose if one writes smutty romance novels. A lot of them sounded vaguely French. She has a penchant for last names that start with Saint. None of them fit well with our first names. Once I jokingly said we had chosen the last name Phalange. She commended me on how unique it is. I had actually wanted to keep my own last name because it's a rare one. Only less than 100 people left with my surname, and only 30 of those in America. My father is an immigrant, and it's a little cultural tie to where he's from. And my first and middle names are from my mom's culture. My husband has a nice surname, but it's not in danger of dying out. He actually suggested taking my name first, and I thought about it and liked the idea. And then Cruise Control was just a little too excited about it. We realized with sinking hearts that she was going to change her last name to ours. She's that crazy. So I took my husband's last name. It's the only name she won't change hers to. My maiden name is now my middle name. Anyway, the reason I know she hasn't dropped it, she left another envelope on top of the mailbox this time and wrote my husband's first name plus Cruise Control's last name on it. Inside the envelope was another one of those lists. The contents of the envelope didn't mention no contact at all and sounded like we still talk regularly. One thing even said, "Here is the info that you asked for," which neither of us have ever heard of, much less requested. Okay, firstly, the contents of the envelope didn't mention no contact at all and sounded like we still talk regularly. One thing even said, here is the info that you asked for, which neither of us have heard of, much less requested. Yeah, you may not have requested it, OP, but your husband did. And I am almost 100% sure at this point that OP's husband is talking to his mom behind OP's back. He has to be. Secondly, I'm going to guess that OP's dad is the one that ended things with cruise control because she is obviously very scorned and very insecure, which is probably why she's so territorial over OP's husband and why she has the "you will never leave me and I will never leave you" mindset with him, and why she wants to take ownership of him with him not having the same last name as her ex-husband, because she ain't over him. She is still hurt that her ex-husband left her. Side quest, my mom is the same way with my dad. She refers to his previous partners and current wife as the other woman, even though her and my dad have been divorced for like 25 years. She was also married to someone else for 10 years. Honestly, at this point, I'm convinced that cruise control is my mom. OP? Sister-in-law? Is that you? But anyways, that is all from me today. I hope you enjoyed these two little past tense cruise control stories. I always like to paint the picture of our antagonists, and I wanted to share the cringe with you guys. Please leave a like and subscribe if you want. I truly appreciate when you do, and I will see you all in the grand finale soon. Bye!